Mary Me, Annie here. This is a video in response to a question that Yetta gave me. I am so enjoying getting to know you, my friend. Oh, what a blessing you've become. Really enjoying our exchanges, and I really liked the question that you sent. You sent me a couple, and we'll get to the other one at some point too, but this one kind of tickled my fancy today. It was about writing rituals for the solitary. So we're not talking, for those of you who are joining our conversation, we aren't talking about rituals for the solitary. If you have an interest in that, I do have a video that I put up about the process, the why, what ritual might be for the solitary practitioner. I'll put the link to that video below. But this is about the actual writing of a ritual for the solitary. I really was intrigued with this because it was what we put down, what we capture, what we make in a formal sense, the act of writing, about solitary ritual as opposed to ritual with a group. So I'm thinking that the ritual with a group would be when we work with others conjointly. So I'm thinking that the working with others would be when we all assemble our bits and pieces and bring a ritual together. And it could be when we inherit ritual as part of our training, where a ritual comes to us already complete. So when we sit down as a solitary, without the benefit of being in a circle with others or having inherited this is the right, what about the writing of the right? So a lot of that might be addressed in the video that I linked to here, which is the first thing one would have to know is why is one doing a ritual? You're going to look at a blank piece of paper if you sit down to write up a ritual. You want to know what you're taking out of it. Let me rephrase that. You want to know what you're making an offering of within the ritual and what you're taking out of it. The purpose, the plan of the ritual. Then that white piece of paper in front of you becomes your canvas, your artwork, the place you begin to capture the flow of your ritual, the way you write your ritual. My first thoughts on this Yetta were an outline, the 4 or 5 or more if you're someone like me, things that you do as part of a ritual, the repeating pattern of your rituals. If we are a creature that enjoys ritual, someone such as I, the power of that ritual is the repeating pattern of the ritual. So I would say the first step in writing, putting down on that blank piece of paper we're staring at ritual, is capturing the things that we will have be the same each time in our ritual. We need a repeating pattern. Our brains know that pattern. Our gods know the vibration we put up through that pattern. It's a recognition of pattern, the cause and effect that comes out of that. We need it and our gods need it. And you know I'm speaking from my point of view as a traditionalist when I say that. But even at the most basic level, each of us must know the things that we need to do, that we would consider to be a formal or an informal rite. Whether it's some long and lengthy process like mine or a 3-step process that someone else might have. The beginning of the ritual writing to me is the outline of what there will be in every ritual that you do. I think I touch on several of those things in that other video I've listed you to, but it's things like how will you create your sacred place? How will you decide that the place around you is sacred? And my encouragement, if you're interested in formalized ritual, is it should be the same each time, whatever you decide on. What will you call to it? Will you call the ancient ones? Will you call the old ones, the ancestors? Will you call the quarters, the elementals, the guardians? Will you call your patron? Will you call a spirit guide, an animal guide? I'm assuming if you're watching this video and have some interest in Wiccan ritual, well, what god or goddess will you call, or will you call upon the god and the goddess of the Wicca? An outline of what needs to be for something to be a ritual for you. This is outside of what you read in books or see on YouTube. And maybe things that you like, that you've read in books or seen on YouTube, bits and pieces of what you may have experienced if you have the opportunity to do public ritual or have been in a circle and know what you want to take forward from it. But it is yours. That outline to me is the most important thing. How will you decide a place is sacred? What will you invite? What do you want the working of it to be? What will you take away from the circle out of that? And how will you then declare, this is over, and back into the world outside of the one I create for my ritual? An outline of the points of what you want to do in ritual. The importance of that structure is then we weave the intent of a rite around that. There are certain things which change around the things which don't change. Writing a ritual should be thinking each time about, is there a specific deity we want to honor? Are there specific aspects of the elements we want to honor? Certain powers of the elements we want to call up? Adding in the working, the rite. And that's done around the things that we do each time. As far as writing it, steal it. Anything you find that inspires you, steal it. I have collected over the years any quarter calls, any calls to the guardians, any calls to the gods or the old ones that I have found inspirational. And I keep them. I keep them in files. They used to be little pieces of paper in a box, and now they're going on my laptop. I like stealing things. Okay, it's a given. The work that I do with my circle has a pattern and a routine, and it's not a hodgepodge. It is something that is the same from time to time. But the power of working as a solitary is, there's no such thing as plagiarism. Steal it. Find what you like, know what inspires you, and use it. Collect it in bits and pieces, and then when you go to do a ritual, it's like, okay, I'm going to do a ritual for healing for myself. Well, I'll use an example. Let me make this personal. Recently I did a ritual to myself to keep myself on the path of weight loss that I've started to be a healthier person. And I want to do a ritual around that. Not for the moon or for a holiday. It was one of those anytime you need to, you do rituals. And I had all these things I've collected over the years that have inspired me. Certain aspects of certain deities, certain elemental energies to call up in circles, certain workings to do. And it was like a buffet where I had all these things I collected, and I grabbed this as, this feels good. This is how I'm going to call God and Goddess tonight. This is the energy, the elements I want. I added that to my little pile. This is how I want to acknowledge my guardians. Ooh, here's a working that I saw once that I really, really liked, and I kept it. Here, I'm going to use it. And I put it together. Didn't take too much time to put it together because what I had was my outline, which never changes. The flow of the rite and the way I do things. And then I could add these things in. For me, the inspiration has come from books. In the worst, and there are so many witchy books, I will find a beautiful poem or a quarter call that I absolutely adore, or a way to honor God or Goddess that just reaches in and finds a special place in me. Steal the bits and pieces of what you want. Now, of course, you can do that online nowadays, too. Not something I've done so much yet, but there's no reason why I wouldn't. I have a pretty full collection of what I work from at this point. So you have the things that you will do each time, which is the outline of a ritual, and then you start filling in the bits and pieces around the intent of a particular ritual. And I'd say it's no different for a solitary than it is for someone practicing in a group. Make everything the first person that you find. When it says we call upon, make it I call upon. Make everything be coming from you. And in light of that, I do say, no matter how much you steal, don't be afraid to then rewrite it to please you. I certainly write my own rituals, write all my calls, write everything about a ritual. And even when I don't do that, when I use these things I've collected that have inspired me, you know, when people share something that inspires you, it's a very spiritual connection you make. If not with them, just to the energy of the thing that you've collected. When you do that, though, change words, make it fit what you need it to be. If you ever share anything in a public way, of course you want to acknowledge where it came from and use it correctly, but when it's you as a solitary, take what you find that inspires you, reword it to suit you, put it in the first person, and you are set. You can write your ritual around those bones, which I keep referring back to, which is so important to know, the things you will do each time. The part that I have found the most challenging about being a solitary, now I say that about being a solitary even though I am covened, but I do rites on my own too. I got in the habit in the years I was not in a circle to do rites as a solitary, and I have not been willing to give that up. I do it in addition to what I do with my circle. Lots of rituals in my life. I found the most challenging part of that was the invocation of the god and the goddess. So this is not about that moment earlier in Rite where you light candles to honor them and welcome them. This is about invocation. It's a matter of creativity, and I'm sure that we all have wonderful ways in which we have done this kind of invocation, and please do share them in the comments so people can see what your ideas might be. My problem has been when you read books or you read rituals online, the charges of goddess and god are pretty pieces of poetry. There's something you read as you would read Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. There's nothing in that that makes them be this intimate connection moving through and sharing of your body and who you are with your deities. I feel them a little dry, even the most beautiful of the poetry that we find in books and online. I feel it dry. It's like stepping back in front of a podium and reading forth a poem for the world to hear. It can be that way, but we can make it so not be that way. We need to develop what our personal style is, in the way that we first have invited the gods earlier on in our ritual, and then we want to draw them literally into us. What is our personal style? It becomes, again, the repeating pattern. This outline of ritual that I'm telling you is so important, because we know what it means when we come to it. Our brain goes to a place it never goes to at any other time, and our gods know this. We literally are a beacon calling them to us. How might we do this? I have found it is much simpler. I struggled for years how to do this as a solitary. I could sit down in my circle, invite Goddess to be with me, and she was. And I was with her, and it was beautiful. But I'm awakened because of the love of God and Goddess. I felt a real lacking of his presence. I could honor him, I could welcome him, I felt he was there, but this intimate moving of him through the humanity that I represent in circle wasn't there. This is what I came up with. It is so simple after all the things I tried, but it's so simple in the end. So here I am, a woman alone, about to invoke the god. I simply use these words. In perfect union, I speak the words of the Great Father, he who has borne so many names, but to all is known as the God. That simple sentence. Putting myself in union with him, inviting him who's already at my circle. I called him, invited him when I lit that candle earlier. I have said, in union with you, being one with you, conjoined. The word that we use during cakes and wine. Being with me, I speak your words. And in speaking his words, I truly feel he is with me as I speak them. And perfect union is really, really important to me. Shifting this invocation to the power of the solitary, invoking the gods within them. In perfect union, I speak the words of the Great Father. And then I use whatever charge I have chosen to use. A man can do the same thing. When I do an invocation for myself, when I am invoking the goddess, I might be able to more instinctively and easier by speaking the charge know that I am speaking it with her, but a man could well start by saying, in perfect union I speak the words of the goddess, she who has been known by so many names. Feel her surround you, feel her embrace you. It's almost like you're making love with the gods. It's that moment when you are so with someone that you are one being. A solitary can do this powerfully on their own. They really can. It's just shifting of perspective and a slight jiggling of the words, but you announce you're one with, and you feel their presence and you join with them. It's an intimacy you've created within your circle, an act of intimacy, sharing yourself with the Lord and the Lady that you adore, if this is your way. I really think this is the only unique aspect to writing ritual as a solitary. And there's a lot of power in it. Think when you are in ritual with another, you're not the priestess or the priest, you are attending the ritual. And they bring down God, and they bring down Goddess, and that energy channels through them. And a good priest and priestess will bring it out into all who are attending. And they will rise up the energy through themselves and back out again. As a solitary, you own that power. The intimate connection with the divine that moves into your circle is not something you're waiting on somebody else to do. It's not something you're witnessing. You are it. You make it happen. And you make it happen by opening yourself up, by a complete vulnerability that opens yourself up to the God and the Goddess. And you can do it powerfully as a solitary. I think the greatest sadness about practicing as a solitary is if, for instance, as a woman, I left the God out of my rituals, because of course I feel more comfortable with her. I can close my eyes at any point I want in life, and I am so imbued with her and so one with her. But if I haven't involved him in my rituals to that extent, I truly am not celebrating the aspects of being a Wiccan which are most important to me, who each of them are, who they each are to me and who I am to them. So Yetta, the only thing about a solitary rite that I find unique to come up with your own style with is how to handle this act of invocation, to make it be not the recitation of pretty poetry, but the being with both the goddess and the god, no matter if we are male or female, being able to do that. If you have developed your ability to do this, your technique, which I find in the end was much simpler than I tried to make it when I first started practicing solo rites, if you have the power in you to do that, and we all do if it is what we want, that moment when we do, that moment when we are at the time for cakes and wine, and we offer the chalice and we offer the blade, we feel both of them move through us so powerfully at that moment. The intermingling of both of them within our body and ourself as the third entity in that energy exchange is amazing. Absolutely amazing. It can be the sole purpose for a rite to bring your beloveds into you and be with them. There's beautiful, beautiful power in this as a solitary. And nobody can take this from you or tell you what it must be, because it is something you experience personally at that deep, deep level. So I don't know if this is the kind of thing you were looking for yet when it comes to the writing of ritual for the solitary practitioner. To me it is knowing the things that will not change each time and writing around that, the intent of that particular ritual, both what you want to happen within it and what you will take away from it. And that intent can be anything from the most sophisticated magical workings to simply wanting to be in that circle. The only thing that I think we need to keep in mind as a solitary practitioner is making it be the power of the God and the Goddess within us as a solitary, which if we have experience in group work, we need to come up with a technique that works for us at the solitary level. And if we are a solitary practitioner who is learning through experience of the internet and the books and trying things on for size, there is no such thing as pretty poetry when it comes to the charge of the goddess or of the god. And if that pretty poetry aspect doesn't move you, if the literary reading of words doesn't move you, keep in mind the power of what you write into your ritual can very well be with the goddess, be with the god. And what comes to you and what comes through you, what you know of both of them, of their aspects of the divine that you know, is the power of your ritual. That line that, for me, is that invocation in perfect union with, and then it is the charge that I will read with them, as them, being one with them, can well be a line in your ritual, which is being with Goddess, being with God. Behind that, you know what it is you want to experience and what you will cause to happen at that moment in your ritual. So invocation to me is a very important part of ritual for the solitary practitioner, as is. What is it that you will hold the same each time you do ritual? I'm not saying that over time you don't adjust that. I certainly have. I probably will always shift and change things a bit. My point is that there is a skeleton of a ritual that is what you know, what you will go through by rote. It's the rhythm, it's the flow, it's the energy of what you create. And in the repetition of that over and over and over again, you are in an instinctual place of knowing about what you are doing. And when you are in that zone, that is when you offer this vibration, this energy, this opening up, which brings to you the power of the gods. Truly, truly believe that. Truly, truly believe that. You can be walking around that circle with something written in your hand, or you can know it and be saying it. Either way, if it is a repeating pattern and you know why you do each thing that you do, no matter how brief or how lengthy you've written that ritual, it's the bell that calls out to the energy that you want to use to create the sacred place, which is the place of your ritual. I wish you mirth and reverence. Mary Park.